Hello dear viewers, welcome back. I'm Professor Muhammad Asif Iqbal with you once again with my channel IELTS Advanced and English with M. Asif. Well, before this video, this is IELTS Speaking Part 3. Before this, I have already published my videos on IELTS Speaking Part 1 and Part 2. The links to those are there in the description. And in today's video as well, I will give you a very authentic and detailed analysis on IELTS Speaking Part 3, the top tips and the strategies and the sample sentences, answers containing expanded response and the kind of language. And during the course of presentation of this lesson, I will also show you a model, a very nice model of the real IELTS test, and we will have a chance to analyze it, to assess it, and first of all you can rewind it, think yourself, assess yourself, but I will also present my analysis on the same. So let's proceed with the rest of the lesson. Okay, so now we are in part 3 of our lesson. Okay, let's see what we have now. Because since you know that part 3 is closely related to part 2, because based on that, on the topic you have already talked about, you will be asked detailed discussion. There will be a detailed discussion, detailed answers are required on your part. Okay, so that's why I have shown you once again that cue card of part 2. For example, this is a cue card, like you have a topic, describe a beautiful place to visit in your country, and the points that you should say, where it is, how to get there, what there is to do when you are there, and explain why you recommend it. Okay, now in part 2, the probable questions, the areas which could be based on which the examiner can ask you questions, you can see here in blue. Like the examiner can ask you about the attitudes to tourism, and the questions you can be asked: why do you think people like to travel to different places in their free time? Okay, that can be one question. And another can be: how do you see tourism changing in your country in the future? Well, another area can be conserving the countryside, related to the same topic you have talked about. First question can be: why is it important to protect the countryside? And second one: in what ways is the countryside in danger in your country? Okay, now the third part related to that could be historic buildings and monuments. Okay, the first question related to this could be: why are historic buildings and monuments important to a city? And the next question could be: is it better to keep old buildings or build new modern ones? Okay, almost these 6 questions, something like this. At least 3 to 4 areas can be touched based on the topic you have already talked about in part 2. Okay, now let's proceed. Well, in part 3, detailed answers are required. This is the first thing you must keep in mind. Okay, the examiner is trying to dig deeper into what you have already discussed, and the examiner was silent. But now the patience there is no patience in the examiner now. While you were talking on a topic, the examiner's mind was also working on the questions which by the way, they are already prepared with them, but still some new questions could come up to their mind. Okay, now best way to organize your answers. Number 1, idea. Okay, this is about part 3. Answer the question directly. Okay, that is, give that idea. Explain, give a reason or explain the answer in detail. And number 3, alternative. What is alternative here? Give an alternative, for example, the opposite to your answer, and that also automatically gives you a chance to expand your answer. These are the ways to expand, okay, and to organize. And number 4, You can quote an example. You will sorry, you will look at some examples here. I will give you example, and you will see, you will watch a video also which can be helpful. Other than the video, I will explain with examples the alternative idea. So you can give an example to support the alternative idea. And point 5, another idea. You could quote another idea to relate it to the idea you have already discussed. Okay, so sometimes you think of another idea while speaking. Just add it at the end of your answer. Okay. Now we have some nice examples here. You see, you can the point here is you can do even better without these steps. Okay, if you are gifted naturally, you are gifted with the flow and the richness of flow of talk, and the richness of vocabulary, and the logical development of ideas, and your guts of expanding the answer. But see, if you lack in these areas, then this is the best way to practice. Okay, but practice is required. For example, the question is, why do you think some people prefer to buy products from their own countries rather than imported items? Now, this is answer based on what you saw on the previous slide, like the idea. You start with the idea. I suppose it's because those people want to support the economy of the country they live in, and then explain. Okay, if they buy something that was made in their own country, they know that they are contributing to the salaries of workers within the same country. Okay, now you could come up to alternatives. Whereas if they buy imported items, a foreign company and its employees will benefit. Okay, now you can quote an example. For example, if I buy some meat that originates from a local market, local farm, rather than a farm in another country, I'm helping one of my fellow citizens to carry on in business. Okay, now another idea, as we discussed before, you could add that. For example, also I think that trust is an issue. People might feel that they can trust domestically produced items more than imported ones. Okay, now if in this way you answer, you expand, well, you deserve band 9. Okay, but of course flow must be there, everything must be there. Okay, so see, this is the best way. You will never have seen it before. Okay, now there's another example. In your opinion, the question is, are newspapers important? Okay, now if there's a question, example, student answer, yes sir, in my opinion newspapers are very important. Now add something. Why? Because they give us information about what is happening around the world, and again, reason, they are a vital source of knowledge about education, technology, medicine, and many other fields. For example, now this is well, what is good, what is bad about it? It's a good start, but let's try to raise this answer to band 9 now. This is not band 9 standard. Okay, still it has not been expanded to that level. Okay, now the same one with the alternatives and examples. See, improvement upon the same. Yes, in my opinion newspapers are very important because they give us information. Well, this has already been discussed till here. Okay, now alternatives were missing, examples were missing in the previous answer. If newspapers didn't exist, I think the quality of news coverage would suffer because there would be fewer professional journalists. Example, now another example, we would have to rely, for example, on unpaid bloggers who do not have the budget to carry out detailed research because they write an article. Okay, now that could be the best way. Now the question can be, do you think the seasons still influence people's behavior? Seasons. Okay, now there is a question. Example answer could be like this. You see, so I'm not now reading everything here because that will prolong the video too much. Already it has got prolonged. But see, this is the structure. You start with the idea and then give the reason, give an example, give opposites, alternatives. Okay, so this is the way you can then play and freeze the videos to read them in details here. Similarly, we have another example. See, I've given you so many examples here. So feel free to go through them, and the criteria is the same what I've already explained. All right. Now, do you think it's important? Now, this is another one. See, this is in part 3 of IELTS. It really helps if you give personal. Okay. Now, see here. Yes, I think in my case, I think so. This is something from a personal example. All right. But still, it has not been expanded that much. You need to expand. Now, this is another question here. I remember that. Can hobbies. Now, what was the point? Never say that was also from personal example. Another example for that. Never say, sorry, I know nothing about it. Well, it's quite easy for the examiner. They will give you 0 here. It's usually easier to tell the truth. Okay. However, sometimes your only option is to lie. Okay. So even if you have to lie, come on, it's business. Okay. And everything is fair here. You need marks. Band. Sorry. Describe a team project that you worked on, for example, and you never worked on it. You are a student. Okay. So this is a sticky situation. Okay, really. Here's how you could adapt to this question. Now, what you should do, for example, talk about a project you did alone. Okay, and pretend other people were involved. Okay. Okay, now go back to school days and talk about something you studied, pretending it was a group project. Sorry, there's a spelling mistake. Pretending, G is missing here. Okay. And talk about an English lesson, for example. Most English teachers put their students in groups from time to time. Okay, make them talk. Right? So your memory, I said make your mind as a recorder. Okay, and you can later on utilize that stuff. That could be handy to you. Okay. Now we have time to watch and listen to the real IELTS test, part 3 of the same test, and then you will have time. You can rewind the video and you can think about it critically. You can think about it yourself, and then of course after that I will give you my own analysis also.
That's why
Thank you. And does this person often buy you presents?
Well, he's good at remembering my birthday and our anniversary, so he does usually buy me something nice then, but he doesn't just buy a present out of the blue.
Thank you. Could I have the booklet, the pencil and the paper back, please? Thank you. Now, you've been telling me about a present you received, and I'd like to ask you some more general questions related to this. So let's talk about attitudes to gifts. Can you tell me something about how people feel when they receive a homemade gift and when they receive a shop-bought gift?
Well, I think as with everything, it depends on the person and the gift. When a grandchild makes something for their grandparents, like a bookmark or a clay pot that they've made at school, then obviously their grandparents will treasure it. For adults, I think it's a bit different. If people are going to give homemade gifts, then they need to be of really good quality.
Why do you say that?
Well, when children make things, it's the thought that counts. But when it's adults making things, it has to look like the present is a proper present, rather than something they've made just because it's cheaper. Of course, the thought still counts, and in many ways, our time now is more important or precious than money. So if somebody has spent a lot of time making a gift, it will mean a lot. But if someone has made some chutneys or pickles or some other type of food, then it has to be edible and taste nice as well.
So what about shop-bought gifts?
Most gifts these days are shop-bought. And there isn't really anything wrong with that. What is important, I think, with a shopboard gift is that the person buying the gift should spend some time thinking about what the other person would really appreciate. It's no good a husband going into a perfume shop and buying the first perfume he likes. He needs to see what perfume his wife is wearing. That shows his wife that he's paying her attention.
And do you think that children get more pleasure receiving gifts than adults do?
Yes and no. Obviously, children love receiving gifts, but children do generally get a lot of gifts. Children these days are spoiled and they get too many gifts. So the more gifts they get, the less they value them. Adults, on the other hand, generally have the resources to buy things for themselves. So if they really want something, they can buy it. Of course, this then makes present buying for adults much more difficult. But of course, there are things that we like that we can't really afford, or we can afford them but can't justify their expense.
What sort of things are you thinking of?
For women, it might be perfume or a day at the spa or a new pair of party heels. For men, usually something to do with their hobbies or books or CDs.
Do you think that more people get more pleasure giving or receiving gifts?
This is a tricky one.
Why?
Well, I think most people get pleasure out of both. Of course, it depends. We may not get a lot of pleasure out of giving gifts to children who we know may not appreciate them. But if we have found the perfect gift for someone we love and we know it's going to make them happy, well, then this will really fill our hearts with joy. Similarly, if someone receives a gift of something that they don't really want, or they can sense that it has been bought out of haste, then this isn't really going to make them feel that good. But if it's something wonderful, then, well, of course, they're going to feel fantastic about it.
Let's move on to talk about the commercial aspects of giving. How much do advertisements influence people when they buy gifts?
In my opinion, probably not too much. I mean, most adverts are for things like cars and household products, which aren't really gifts. Although a lot of young people like to be given new phones and other gadgets. So if a parent isn't sure which model to get, then they could be influenced by advertising.
And do you think that some festivals have become commercialized as a result of the emphasis on buying gifts?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes. In fact, I think it's much worse than that. It's not just the old festivals becoming commercialized, but so-called new ones being created just for the sake of present giving.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yes. Things like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. These aren't Indian traditions, but suddenly we find we have to buy a present for our spouse on Valentine's Day. And while it is nice to recognize how important our mothers are, surely it should be something we do every day, not just once a year when we buy her some chocolates.
Thank you very much, Saba. That is the end of the speaking test.
Okay, dear viewers, you have watched the video and listened to the interview. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. You might have made up your mind, come up with some analysis on it. But anyway, this is my expert analysis based on IELTS assessment criteria. Okay, now the task focus, as I have taken it from the official website of IELTS. In this part, the part of the test focuses on the ability to express and justify opinions and to analyze, discuss, and speculate about issues. Okay, it is of course based on what you have already expressed in part 2. Okay, now the examiner is digging deeper into that. Fine. So let's look at the merits and demerits of of the responses she gave in this part. Okay, first of all, she was fluent. Okay, throughout in her part 1, part 2 also, which I have shown in my part 1 and part 2 videos. Throughout her speech, she was fluent and hardly showed any repetition or self-correction, except for short but natural pauses for ideas. Of course, they are allowed unless they get too prolonged, and give a bad impression to the examiner. Okay. Well, next, the coherence and cohesion, that is the unity of ideas, the flow among the ideas. Well, throughout her speech, it was expressed, but the problem here was she hardly utilized cohesive expressions. Like, in my opinion, well, I'm afraid, as I said before, these are the connectors, which are cohesive devices, cohesive expressions. Well, they were missing to much extent, but still she was coherent. Okay. And then the vocabulary range. Okay, here she was good. She utilized good range of lexical expressions or vocabulary expressions, like out of blue, grandparents will treasure it. Okay. And wearing the perfume, instead of saying using the perfume. Well, that's very commonplace. So they were nice expressions, and but still here, although it is still a limited range, I say, she could still go further. Okay. And coming to the pronunciation, well, she made a good use of stress and intonation, the rises and falls, and created a very musical impact throughout her speech, a flow, and that is always that's very pleasant to the ears of the listener, who is the examiner, of course. But also her pronunciation of the individual words was appreciable, reasonably very nice. Okay. And then finally, the grammatical range and accuracy. Well, throughout her structures, she was accurate in grammatical structures. She didn't make mistakes, but however, she hardly used a wide range of varied structures and sentence types. Okay, so variety was missing again here as well. Okay. And then the skills assessment. Well, her top quality, above all, she clearly expresses the ability to speak at length and still remains organized and coherent in speech. Well, this is a plus point on her part. Throughout her test, she expressed it well, and she was fantastic at justifying her opinion quite critically, with clear and detailed analysis of it. It's not like she was just prolonging her speech, but she was also very analytical of it and had arguments, evidence to support her opinion. Well, that was the plus point. And this is the video source, our acknowledgement to the source. We respect it. Well, dear viewers, that was everything about IELTS Speaking Part 3, and I have, to my utmost, I have given you a very detailed analysis on Part 3, and I do hope you have learnt a lot, and not only from the video and the analysis I presented, but also my own analysis which I have shared with you in my PowerPoints. The links to the previous videos on IELTS Speaking Part 1 and Part 2 can be found in the description. I suggest, before watching this video, you should prefer to watch Part 1 and then Part 2 and finally Part 3. Students who are interested in online classes with me and for more interactive and advanced lessons on IELTS or English language in general, they are most welcome. They can find my WhatsApp contact in the description below. I have always given it. And as always, I request you, please subscribe and like my channel and share it with your social circle, relatives, kith and kin. And do comment. Please do comment on my videos so that I can improve upon my coming work. And I have made some other videos also on IELTS related videos and English language related videos. The links to those also can be found in the description. On language, English language tenses, I have my videos in English as well as Urdu. Thank you very much for being with me. Remain in touch with my channel and keep following up my videos. Thank you very much. See you in my next videos.